Hey all, boardgamerants here. We'll find everything solo tabletop gaming and more. And today I have a gem, Bloodborne, the board game. Let's have a look inside, and I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking from a solo perspective on the other side. So Bloodborne the game, Bloodborne, this is a Kickstarter thing that came with the base game here, which is essentially the area up here is the extra stuff. So this, more bad guys and more characters to play. It's really not much more than that with the Blood Moon box. So keep that in mind, that the base game doesn't come with these extra goodies here. It just adds more variety to your base game. Not any more stories or anything like that. Here's the base game tray, and you've got yourself 4 stories basically to explore. Each contains 3 chapters, and then you've got down here the minis that came with the base game, and some of the characters you can play. It came with 4 characters you can play, and all the bad guys. Beautiful looking minis here that you'll use depending on what chapter you're playing. And some of the stories you can just you'll be randomly picking. But moving on, so I'm just kind of going over the storage area over here, not where we're playing the game yet. This is just where you grab stuff to play your game, and I'll show you in a second. But you got some big bad guys up here to fight. You got their tiles, a stack of tiles here. You're going to be grabbing certain ones out to play a certain story, and then some random ones. You've got the cards that tell you, how a bad guy attacks and how much health they've got. You got some weapons that you'll be able to find for your hunters, and then some more goodies. So once we get about here to the right, now we're talking the game. So in this particular story, I'm on chapter 3 of Secrets of the Church, so don't stop and read anything here unless you want spoilers. But I've got some random, well, I think 2 of these are random monsters, and one, the setup card for chapter 3 told me to get. So I've got 3 basic bad guys. They're going to show up according to their symbols up there and the tiles that are drawn, and I'll show you that tile in a second. I've got some upgrade cards here I can use to upgrade. There's this timer track that goes up, and that basically gets all the way to the end, and you lose if you haven't completed the missions that the chapter has you completing. And there's a combination of insight missions, and then the hunt mission is the one that you really need to complete. Typically you got to complete a number of the insight missions in order to qualify to finish the hunt. Got an enemy action deck here, which is quite interesting. It's just a very set number of enemy actions that can be taken, and there's only 3 different actions that can be taken. There's 3 basics, there's 2 specials, and 1 ability. So there's basically 6 cards in this deck, and you'll rotate it. That can help you too with your strategy. You'll be able to kind of tell, how many basic attacks are left or special attacks. So based on what you're fighting, you can plan accordingly based on what you've known has been drawn here. It's a very awesome tactical experience there when you're playing the game, to be able to get your timing down, which if you've ever played Bloodborne, the video game, which is what this is all based on, it's very tactical, and it's all about getting to know the individual enemies that you're fighting and their behaviors and their timing. You got to get your timing down, and the game does a very good job of capturing that. So here is basic player. We're going to spend most of your time, this is your character and stuff, and then out here you're going to be exploring the tiles. Let's get down and dirty. So here is where you are going to start off with a weapon that you can use. You got your threaded cane here in this case. There's a bunch of different characters you can play, and they have different attacks on them and different abilities on them, and then you flip them over. You can transform your weapon much like you can in the video game, and then you've got a little side weapon here that comes with your character, whoever you're playing. And you got your mini right there that is individual for each character. And straight up 6 health. You also have a deck here. This deck controls what you can do. And you're going to be drawing every round, drawing 3 cards. These cards can be upgraded from the Hunter's Dream. You can either go to the Hunter's Dream or you die and you end up in the Hunter's Dream, but then you'll spend your blood echoes, which you get by killing monsters, and then you're going to upgrade your 12 cards. This is always going to be 12 cards. So it upgrades very quickly. It doesn't seem like it, but it does, because whenever you purchase a card out here, these are much stronger cards than the 12 basics you start with, you replace a basic. So basically you buy and replace. So instead of, 12 cards and then, oh, now you've got 13 cards, you hope you draw it, you're only ever going to have 12 cards. So you're replacing, you're leveling up. Essentially, it makes you level up twice as fast as other games that just have you add cards, like other, say, deck builders, where you eventually have to get to a point where hopefully you can trash a card. Nope, you get to buy and trash a card in one step with 1 blood echo. So you level up quite quickly in this game, although it doesn't maybe feel like it. Or feel like you would, but that is I'm very glad that they implemented that. And over here you've got all sorts of items. So up top here you've got your consumables, and then down below, don't spend too much time on those. Those are like rewards. Don't want to spoil stuff, but you'll get certain rewards for completing chapters and insight missions and stuff. And then here we have a stack of tiles that's going to be used as we go out and explore. And pretty much always start right here on the central map. And you're going to be going around exploring tiles, flipping these over. And the chapter that you're playing is going to have certain ones that are definitely going to come up, but sometimes they don't come up right away, and you just got to fly around the board trying to find certain things to unlock. Like you're not going to be able to reveal card 36 until you find the courtyard lamp, and you move on there, on the courtyard lamp tile. And this tells you, I can trade in blood echoes instead of leveling up in this particular mission. I can trade them in to the Hunter's Dream to continue the mission. And so you're going to be keeping track of this stuff. You're going to be keeping track as this move. Every time you're done with your turn, then this moves up. Every time you visit the Hunter's Dream, whether because you died or you're going to level up, this moves up. So this track, it moves up fast and puts the pressure on. But my experience has been that, it moves fast. The games move at such a speed that, and you're leveling up so quickly. Well, depending on how it goes on out here, the game can be a little bit unforgiving too if you just don't get the right tiles at the right time. But there's ways to mitigate that by just running through. There's mechanics here where like if a monster shows up, you're not necessarily, you can't, a lot of games you'll end up in the same space as a monster and you're stuck until you fight it or something, or you're going to take damage if you try to run away or all this stuff. In this game, and much like the video game, you can just run right by monsters. Then they're going to kind of pursue you like the video game does, but you can mitigate the luck of the draw of these tiles by just flying around until you find what you're looking for. And the battles. So the fighting is where this game is it's all in the fighting. And you've got, damage that you're going to do when you place a card down in a slot. It gives you a little ability here, and then it shows you the damage. It shows you how fast the attack is. Basically, there's 1 to 3 arrows that determine the speed of your attack, because then depending on what you're fighting, you're going to have to look at its speed, how much damage it does, what its abilities are in the little section below it for basic cleaver. It's going to have, you got to read that text and be sure to incorporate that. But if you stagger it, because then you don't have to worry about any of that, any of the damage. You can dodge attacks. You're going to get poisoned and stuff like that. Much like other games, but this idea of basically picking your attack, flipping over the enemy action to see what it's going to do. In this case, it's going to do an ability. Then depending on what you're fighting, you just look at that section and you go with it. Tells you what to do. And again, you're gonna come across 3 basics and 2 specials and 1 ability. So once you get down to the last card, you know what the enemy's going to do. You can plan accordingly. You can make sure you're fast enough to stagger it. You can make sure, all sorts of tactical fighting comes into play with this very straightforward, simple system that is super engaging with the cards that you can purchase to upgrade. You can totally play off your strengths. Like I'm gonna be upgrading my deck here to include lots of stagger, because I can stagger even if I'm at the same speed. Usually you have to be at least 1 arrow faster with your attack to stagger, but the threaded cane here is all about staggering, so you can upgrade your deck accordingly. And then when you flip this over, I can see, for instance, this particular character also, when I dodge, it deals enemies, so I can focus on getting dodge upgrades here. Over here, which I didn't even go over, there's a whole stack of characters that you can play, and their weapons that come with it. Just some of the goodies you'll find in Bloodborne, the board game. So I can actually also talk a little bit about this from a multiplayer perspective, because the first 2 games I ever played of this game was 2-player. And I could tell, I was just like, oh man, I hope this is as good solo as it is 2-player. It's 2-player, I mean, it was fantastic. And I plan on playing more 2, maybe even 3-player of this game. And, it helps too when you know the game Bloodborne. And my son, who I play it, has beat the game. Which is, I haven't played it in a while. I decided to go ahead and take out the video game, play it, immediately remembered why I rage quit this game a long time ago. Because I'm just not good enough it's just, when you defeat one of the big bosses, the main bosses at the end of a chapter or story, if you will, it is one of the most incredible feelings in video gaming, because you've really accomplished something. It takes just genuine skill. And I was a little afraid that the board game was going to be a little like that, so I didn't actually back the Kickstarter. I waited till it came out. I waited till people said stuff. I was very interested in the game. But, Dark Souls, I passed on that game because a lot of people, I just saw enough that told me, they're so expensive, these games. And so I passed on that. Even, was it Bloodborne, the card game? Didn't get great reviews, so I passed on that, even though I think that actually had a solo, or maybe it was Dark Souls. I don't know. There was some solo options with Dark Souls is sort of the first. Bloodborne was a version of Dark Souls, which is completely unforgiving. I mean, legendary. Dark Souls has a very well-deserved legendary status to it, and because of how unforgiving and how it resets, and you play and you got to go back and go through everything all over again. So back to Bloodborne, I wasn't too sure if the board game was going to be like that. I mean, because that could it could get old real quick. And because in a video game, hey, at least it just automatically resets everything for you, and you just take off and you go. And that was frustrating enough, because you would do it over and over and over and over again, and have to work your way back to wherever you were at, going through all these enemies all over again. So was the board game going to be like that? Well, yes and no. It's not nearly as unforgiving. And I would say, too, really the game, I've played it over 10 times now. The base game comes with 4 stories, and each one is a chapter, 3 chapters. And each chapter is basically a game. And you can play a game in about an hour. And I guess the way it's like the video game is that you as you go through the chapters, if you die on any particular chapter, you have to go all the way back to the beginning and start over again. So if you get through the first game, the first chapter, and now you're leveled up, and now you go on to the second chapter, and if you get to the end of the second chapter, but you don't win that chapter, you don't get to start chapter 2 again. You got to go all the way back to chapter 1. So if you get all the way to chapter 3 and you die, you go back to chapter 1. So so there is that reset effect. But I've won one of well, I'm on chapter. So what I just showed you there, I was on chapter 3 of another story, and I'm feeling pretty good. But it depends. If you're going through the adventure and you don't the right tiles don't come up, that can really slow you down. Because I've had some chapters where it's just like, it says, oh, if you find this tile and you end your movement, you get to move on. And if you just draw all those tiles to begin with, which you've shuffled up, it's a huge advantage. But and I would argue it's like less fun that way. It's like, I got through the chapter and it was just kind of easy because everything just popped up where it needed to go. Because sometimes for a mission you got to take a character, an NPC back to a tile. Well, sometimes that tile is 5 tiles away, and sometimes it's right next to the next tile. Just luck of the draw. So that's the only thing that I found. I prefer, grabbing this NPC and having to just wiggle my way through all the monsters and stuff. It just feels like the game, and this game, the thing that makes this game for me is the fighting, is how tactical. It's a beautiful system, and it's very exciting, and it has just enough of mystery to it. The way that the enemy deck is stacked up. So now the enemy deck, I didn't go over some of the big boss decks that you can take on. You take on, like Father Gascoigne, well, I don't know how you say exactly. Anyway, he's like the first big boss in the video game. And when you take them on, there's 2 phases. There's like a phase 1, and when you're fighting this Father Gascoigne, and then there's a flip. Once you beat him down enough in the video game, he flips to his phase 2. It's like this beast. The board game does the same thing with these creatures. Takes them, you beat them down to a certain health, and then they flip over to phase 2, and then it throws in. You use a different little separate deck. So you use the basic generic enemy deck for the big bosses. They have their own deck, so it really mixes things up, because this is especially fun when your first attempt at a big boss. You don't know what it's going to do, and I can see some people taking a little of the fun out of the game, and also maybe some of the frustration by just looking to see, okay, what is this thing going to do? What do I have to plan for? But it's way more fun just to get there, try to fight it, realize, okay, it kind of does these things. So then you reset. Maybe you got to play the chapter over again, or the whole story over again. Well, now to build your character a certain way, so it's got lots of dodge, or it's got lots of whatever, because that's what you're going to need to really fight this. And I love that. I love that. And so there's this deck building going on, and then each of the enemies has a very distinct style to it and speed of attack, and it's all very much like the video game. You go against different enemies, and they've all got their different moves, and you got to get your timing down. And the system of fighting in this game just captures it just wonderfully, and it's what makes the game so thrilling for me. So I just can't wait to fight. And you die a lot too in this game, because you've only got 6 health, and one swing from the church giant could just take you out. So unless you dodge it, and so anyway, you do die a lot, but when you die in this game, it doesn't hurt so much, except for it moves up that time tracker. And a lot of people don't like the time tracker. I don't have a problem with it, and because I feel like you just level up so quick, like. I kind of went over how you level up. You basically swap out a card. So you've got 12 cards. So each level up is like a I don't know, what's that, 12 into 100%. So like a 12% upgrade of your character, right? Because if you've got 12 cards and you swap one out, well, that's, 8%, or 8% upgrade. Is that what I'm trying to say? Anyway, so like you're 8% better with every card that you swap out. Sometimes you go into the Hunter's Dream and you've got 3 Blood Echoes, so you can level up 3 times. That's like a 25% upgrade of your character in one shot. And it just makes you so much stronger so quickly. And so, the time that you have to finish a chapter, that little marker goes down and it resets stuff. Monsters come out and reset. And which does have much like the game, every time you die, you come back in and you sort of got to go through all the same bad guys again. It kind of captures that. But I had no problem with that time tracker. I still felt like it put enough pressure on, but I still had plenty of time to level up. if as needed. And so I thought it was a great addition. There's really not that sense in the video game, but I mean, they had to do something to some sort of mechanic to put the pressure on. And so and I felt like it worked. I did personally. And all that said, so you got kind of a sprawling, to keep everything out, to be able to grab and change stuff out, you've got it takes up a lot of table space. The actual playing space isn't that big, but you've got to kind of have all your miniatures and stuff, because you go from chapter to chapter, you're going to have to swap out stuff. So it does take up quite a bit of table space. Initially, when you're setting everything up, you got a good 10-15 minutes to get everything out on the board. But once it's out, you go chapter to chapter. It's pretty quick. 5-ish minutes, 5 to 10 minutes maybe, as you swap out tiles and swap out enemies and stuff. The length of play, though, is a sweet spot, about a good hour. And it is a fast hour. It is a fast and furious hour, and for a chapter. And so good length of play. The component quality, well, for the miniatures is cool. I don't, it's just like they chinsed out on some of the main board stuff, like the board where you keep track of the monsters you're going to fight and your upgrades and stuff is just very flimsy. Your character board very flimsy, and I would have liked to seen them, seem like for these staples of play, you got these beautiful miniatures and this quality stuff here, but not over there. And so I don't know. Anyway, so the components were fine, but you're paying a lot for these games, and so I guess I would have liked to have seen something that's so integral to the gameplay be a little bit more better quality. The cards seem good. The rule book. Now the rule book was fine, but you have to really take it literally and kind of when you're stuck and you're like wondering, like sometimes there's a timing issues and stuff. And so I was looking at Board Game Geek and looking up the FAQ. There's some cards too that just with this first production that weren't right. So it's kind of important to take a look at that FAQ to know, some of the setup stuff is a little off. And so you got to check that out, which is a bit of a bummer. But the rules, as it came, were just, I don't know, it was just some vague stuff there that I think could have been worded better. I mean, it's not a huge rule book, and it's pretty easy to sink in, and get to plan. But like it asks you to collect, insight. And it doesn't really specify, like missions or tokens, because there's tokens, or, so there was some vagaries there that I think could have been better refined. Maybe they will later. If you go to the FAQ, of course, you can figure all this stuff out. It really doesn't take that long, but the rule book was good, but still there was some things I had to look up. And the game's not very very complicated either. It's just learning the system. Once you got the system down, you just kind of know how it flows, and it's not that complicated. But the game, the depth comes in this tactical fighting stuff that you do, which is awesome. Moving on, so the mechanics, I guess. I love the mechanics. I feel like the mechanics captured everything they needed to bring this video game to life on my table. I think it did a swimmingly wonderful job. And from a strategy standpoint, it's all about, just upgrading your deck in certain ways to take on certain chapters where you have certain enemies and bosses. And it's awesome that you have to kind of get to know the bosses. And if you do it organically, where you're just kind of go in and you hit that phase 1 and you learn a little bit about the enemy and you die, now you got to go back. You learn and you evolve, and it's much like the game. You just have to get better at defeating a certain boss in a certain way, and it can drive some people crazy, I think, but it certainly captures the essence of the game with that sort of mechanic, and I love it. Solo is awesome. Just playing one character is awesome. It works just wonderfully. And you've got so many characters with two different sides to their little trick weapons and little powers and different speeds and different attack strengths. And you combine that with all the consumables. You can get all sorts of consumable stuff there that you find. and which alters your attacks, and then you get these, you know, permanent like awards for completing certain missions, the Carol Ruins, if I'm saying that right, and, you know, just other rewards that just also permanently upgrade your, well, permanently for the chapter, for the story, your character, and it all just creates in a very understandable manner. You feel, I mean, you go from just kind of this chintzy little hunter with nothing to feeling god dang magnificent by the end of chapter 3. I mean, you become just this damn near indestructible sometimes. And I love games that do that take you from zero to hero and do it beautifully like this game does. So solo, fantastic solo. There are no real difficulty levels, really. I've seen some people modify stuff with the Blood Moon little thing that came with it. You can throw in different enemies. There's tons of expansions for this game. And so that is how I've got one expansion coming. I have one right here that I haven't even opened, that I just got today. This is the Chalice dungeon. So this is a different way to play the game. You don't have to play through a story or through a chapter. You just play through like a hunt, and you got to get through to the big boss guy. And I believe it's just going to be all randomized, and it's going to be a little bit faster, a different way to play the game. And then there's a bunch of different expansions which just add lots of story. If you want to keep going with the story, there's an expansion that I got that it's just going to add, I think, gosh, what's the expansion called? I think it's called Hunter's Dream. That just I think ups the level of the game, which I'm all for. I want something a little tougher. I'm ready for it. And even though the game's perfectly fun and fine, whether it feels easy one chapter and blisteringly difficult the next, it kind of does that to you without altering any kind of difficulty levels, which can be a negative for some people. But again, it just captures, like if I try to run through, you know, and I realized when I got in and I tried to play Bloodborne just yesterday. And you know, if you get careless and you're just like, damn it, I just want to get to the boss guy, and you try to run through these super easy enemies, they'll just hit you. You know, you try to rush the game, it's going to take advantage of you and kill you and frustrate you. And you know, so that is kind of captured in the way that they did this with the board game, where you know, as long as you're taking your time, you're weaving through, it can kind of feel almost a little easy, but sometimes those tiles don't come out, so then you start rushing through, and then you find yourself cornered, and you just get wiped out, much like the video game. So, replayable as all get out, fun as all get out. This is probably the well, actually, this is easily going to be in my top 10 for this year of 2021. For solo games, this is my first real winner here. I'm on the last day of February, and I've yet to really be like, yeah, oh, this is, oh, I can't get enough of this game. Can't get enough of this game. So, that's it. That's Bloodborne, the board game. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave any comments or anything down below, should you desire. And if you don't, well, I'll see you next time. Until next time, Board Gamer Rants, and I'm out!